What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this character from Among Us using the iPad and Procreate. It's all in real time too, no time lapse, no edits. It's all step by step. So if you want to draw along with me, keep watching. All right, guys, so let's draw this character from Among Us. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 by 4000, 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm gonna start out sketching. So I'm gonna use my HB pencil, which is part of my pencil pack. That's available now. And for my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made. So if you wanna download the same colors that I'm using in today's video and use those in your project, you can download this for free from my website. If you go to bjdell.com, underneath the YouTube reference materials section, you'll find this. You can save it as a JPEG. It'll save to your camera roll. And then once you're back in Procreate, just come up to your wrench icon, go to add, then insert a photo. It'll bring up that camera roll and then it will load it in as a separate layer once you select the right photo. And then you can just go and long press each of the colors to select them as we use them in today's video. So let's get started. I'm gonna start out sketching like I said, so I'm gonna use black and I'm using that HB pencil. And you're gonna see I start out with just some basic shapes. It's really important when you're starting out a sketch to keep it really simple. Just think, okay, what are the shapes that make up the final design? Break it down really easy so you can do an oval like this for the body. We're gonna have the legs come down here, so you're gonna have ovals down there for the legs. This one being kind of bigger than the front because it's gonna be in a 3/4 perspective. So this back leg's gonna be a little bit bigger and larger because of the perspective, front leg being smaller. Backpack back here, same thing, just an oval there, and then an oval up here for the visor. So you can see, super easy, super simple, doesn't really look like our finished sketch, but that's why we're doing this, because it's gonna help us in this next stage, finalizing that sketch. So from here, what we wanna do is we wanna start kind of connecting these shapes. So you'll see this is gonna be where the back comes up, then into the top of the head that comes down and around. And you can see that things are starting to form now using those basic shapes that we started out with as a guide. That's why it's so important to use basic shapes like this to begin with. I think a lot of artists kind of jump ahead of themselves. They want to start the finished design before they even start. And breaking everything down like this is really going to help you visualize stuff. It's going to help you get these ideas out of your head and down onto paper, or in this case, on the iPad screen. And you'll see here this visor part is going to be a little bit more rectangled as it comes around. But we're using that oval as our guide. And then I think I'm going to have some extra flares here. So this isn't going to be a 100% perfect in-game representation. I think I'm going to give this kind of my own take on things. So it's going to have my own flair and my own touches on here. So feel free if you want to follow along and do it like that, or if you want to keep it 100% like the in-game one, you can. I think it's fun to kind of add your own kind of touch to designs like this if you're doing fan art. So there we go. We've got our sketch done. So now it's time to move on to the inking process. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer here. This is going to be the layer that my inks go on. And then the sketch layer, I'm going to hit the N for the blend mode to bring up this menu. I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 44, 45%. We want to be able to see it, but we don't want it to be super dark either. So we've got just kind of this light sketch underneath, and we're going to draw on top of that. But before we actually start doing the inking process, I want to decide, okay, where's my light source coming from? I've talked about this a lot before in videos. Deciding where your light source is coming from before you start inking is going to help you decide on line weights for your design. So the idea behind line weights is a thicker, heavier line is going to represent the shadowed areas. Anything closer to the light source is going to have a thinner line. That's where the highlights are going to be. So for this design, we'll have the light source coming in from this top right-hand corner. So that means lighter, thinner lines here, heavier lines here towards the back, and then towards the bottom. So now that we've got that decided, we can go ahead and start. So I'm going to come up to my brush library and I'm going to switch over to my cartooning pack, which is available now as well. And for this, I'm going to start out using my standard inker streamline. I'm going to hop back and forth between that and my regular standard inker. So we can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna zoom in here just a little bit so we can see better. And I'm gonna start here with the visor. I'm gonna bring this around here, back up. We've got a good start there. I think I'm gonna bring another line here out towards the front, kind of tapers off as this kind of comes out and wraps around there. Once again, this is where I'm starting to do kind of my own thing. This obviously, if you're familiar with the game, is not how the character design works in the game, but I think just adding my own touch to it is gonna make an interesting design. So we've got that started. Let's go ahead now and bring around this top section. So once again, I'm gonna add a little bit of an overlap here, and then we'll bring this line around. Once again, lighter line here, heavier down towards the back. So we'll start to bring this up and around like so. I'm gonna break this line here a little bit so I can bring this overlap here where it meets up to that front leg here. There we go. Kind of fix this part here where it kind of bunched up the lines. And I think I'm gonna do another overlap there. I've got it in the sketch. One thing I talk about too quite a bit with the sketch process is making sure that you don't feel like you have to follow the sketch 100%. The sketch is just kind of a suggestion of where everything goes. You don't have to trace it. If you miss the line, that's okay, as long as it still looks good. That's what you're going for. So just use the sketch more as kind of, like I said, a suggestion of where everything goes. And you'll see I'm switching back and forth between the standard inker and the streamline depending on the type of line that I want. If it's a longer line like this, I'll switch over to the streamline. If it's a shorter line that I need that good taper, I'll just use that other one with the streamline turned off. Get the backpack here. Whoops, I need to switch to my brush. Oh, I switched over to white somehow. Let's get the black back in there. Get the backpack in here. And there we go. There is our basic outlines for a design. From here, I think I'm going to add in just kind of my own touches and flares to it. Once again, it's not stuff that's in the regular designs for the game. So I'm going to switch to my standard inker. And let's just pull in maybe some tapered lines back here in the backpack. Pull in some extra lines here around the visor like that. Maybe a couple more here on the top. Pull those in like that. I'm always a big fan of using these little dots for kind of representing some textures there. Can add some more back down here too. And for here, you can just press harder for bigger dots and lighter for smaller dots. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe do another line here around the visor. Coming back into my streamline. I'll just bring the line down here for the visor. All right, and there we go. There is our finished inks. So now we can go in and actually add colors. So to do this, I'm gonna go back up to my layers menu here. I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer. And I'm gonna drag this down underneath my ink layer. These are gonna be my color flats. So for my inks now, I wanna come back up here to this layer and I wanna set this as reference. This is gonna allow us to drag and drop all of our colors directly on to layer 3. So now that we've got that selected, going back up to my color palette and selecting red and dragging and dropping in. See how quick and easy that is? Super fast. Blue for the visor. And boom, that's it. Color flats are done. I think probably the quickest color flats ever in one of my videos. So super easy. Now we're ready, and you see I drew them on the wrong thing. I've got to back out. I'm glad it was easy because I was on the wrong layer. Always make sure you're on the right layer. Layer 3, how about that? Let's try that. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Now they're on the right layer. We're good to go. Now we can go in and actually start doing the shadows and highlights. So for this, let me turn off the sketch layer. We don't need that anymore. For the shadows and highlights, we're gonna make a new layer. We're gonna turn off reference on layer 2, and then we're gonna set layer 4 as clipping mask. This is going to allow us to add the shadows and the highlights directly to this layer here, to a separate layer, but it's gonna clip it to this one. So if we go outside of anything that's not colored in, it's not gonna show up. So with that selected in clipping mask, let's go into this dark blue first. That's gonna be the shadow for the visor mask part. So we'll just pull down a tapered line like this. There we go. Erase that overlap there. And then once again, going back up to our color palette, darker red here. We'll just go ahead and start filling in some of the other areas here with that darker red. Bring it down underneath the mask. It comes back down here towards the front, and then just bringing this back and around. Since we turned off reference here that we had turned on earlier, we can actually drag and drop this into here now, and it's not going to fill in everything. If we still had reference turned on, it would want to fill in everything on the design. Just going to bring these lines in a little bit better here. And there we go. Get the shadow here in underneath the leg. You'll see I'm just following kind of how the curves of those lines go that I've got from that ink stage. Get those in there. Down towards the front. And I want that to taper in towards the front. So I don't want it to go all the way up here. I want it to break and kind of come up with that curve like that. That's the whole idea, is not to have it all the way to there and kind of have it tapered as that line meets. And then let's do the backpack. So bring this down and around. This is going to be pretty heavy shadowed back here. You're going to see then, we're going to come in and we're going to start removing shadows now. Now that that's done, let's go ahead and drop the opacity because it's really dark right now. So hitting the N for the blend mode again, bringing the opacity down to about, say about 45%, looks pretty good. And now we're going to go ahead, like I said, and remove some of these shadows. We're just going to do this along the outlines. So we're just going to trace along the outlines that we've previously done. And we don't want these to go all the way. This is kind of often used in coloring cartoons, removing the outlines, making sure they don't go to the edge. I've talked about in previous videos, sometimes on certain areas I'll remove them. On this, I'm going to remove it from every single section. The outlines are not going to have shadows or highlights touching them. So we're just going to bring this down and around. And the idea here is we want to make sure that these eraser parts follow that curve of the outline. We want it to follow that shape and that curve that we did with the inks. The other thing we want to try to do too is make sure that this gap here is kind of the same all the way around, so it's not too big up here or too small. And then you can go back in. If you get it too big or too small, you can always either erase or go back in with your brush and add it back in. Here I'm just trying to match it up so it's got a little bit finer of a curve there. It's got a little bump right there I'm trying to knock out without erasing the whole thing. We'll come around here and remove here around the mask. This one around. And I'm not going to worry about it touching these. It's fine, those extra lines that I've got in there, I'm not worried about that. I just don't want it touching the outlines of the other parts. Those kind of detail lines, those are okay for it to touch. It's these other ones that I'm worried about. All right, so there's that. Let's get this one down here all the way done. And then you're going to see I'm going to draw this one back in a little bit so it matches up a little bit better. All right, there we go. Looking good. Let's do the same thing for the backpack here. We're moving along the outlines. And this one I'm going to have it come up and follow that line a little bit better. All right, so there we go. That's the shadows. Let's go ahead and work on, actually let's get the visor here at the inside, the blue. Let's get that one done. And then let's go ahead and do the highlights now. So going back up to my color palette, I'm going to select this pink color. That's going to be the highlights here. So we'll go around. And this one, you'll see there, I've got a little bit overlap of that line right there. I'm going to knock that out real quick. And you'll see, since I use reference, it's got that gap there of white behind it, so I need to fill that back in. But as I'm doing the highlights here, instead of doing all the erasing at the end, I'm just going to go ahead and erase as I go here, now that you guys kind of have the idea of what I'm doing down, the kind of process. This one I think I'm just going to go back in with just a regular tapered one there to kind of fake that one. Same thing here. I'll just pull in some tapered ones here rather than trying to erase that taper. And we're going to pull down this one here, kind of towards that center, back up here. There we go. You're going to see I'm going to want this line to kind of taper. Looks like they're coming into each other. So I'm going to pull that one down. So you see how those almost look like they're going to connect. You can kind of connect them with your eyes. That's what I'm going for there. Looks pretty good. Go ahead and maybe add in some oval highlights here. Maybe another lined highlight down here. I think that looks cool. And then going back up to my color palette, selecting white and hitting the visor now. Get that in there. Going back in with the eraser. Like that. Maybe pulling some other lines across like this for the highlights as well. Just kind of tapered lines coming towards the back there. All right, I think it looks good. So there we go. That is our finished design basically, but it looks pretty plain. So let's go ahead and add a background real quick to this guy. So I'm going to come down to my bottom layer here. I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to go back up to my brush. I'm going to select black here and let's just draw a line around here. Let's have him on the moon, kind of standing, hanging out. Should, I know, probably have him on the ship, but I think this is going to be a little bit quicker going this way. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and let's make a new layer underneath here. And selecting gray, let's drop gray into here, but of course we don't have this connected all the way down and around. Actually we do if we set this to reference, because we're on a separate layer. Now that we've got that set, we should be able to drop it. There we go. Let's go back up to our color palette, selecting black now, and making a new layer again. Just kind of pull in some shadows around here. So I've got that light source coming in from up there. I'm just kind of pulling some shadows here and kind of make it look like the moon has a shadow as well. Just kind of pull that around. And if we connect these, then we should be able to just drag and drop and fill it in. They're pretty connected there, maybe. Oh, we got to turn off reference. Going back to that layer, turning off reference. Now we should be able to drag and drop these in. Yep. There we go. I think I want this one to kind of break a little bit more. So it doesn't look like it's one line, just kind of swoosh. I want to kind of have that oval like this. And then break into that there. I think that looks cool. All right, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and drop the opacity of this and see what we look like. Going back to that blend mode, dragging down the opacity to about 40%. I think that looks pretty good there. All right, now let's go ahead and draw some stuff in here, some craters and whatnot. So going back up here to layer 5, which is the lines there of the moon. And go back up to my brush and just kind of draw in some craters here. So you see I'm just using these tapered lines as they come across. And you get these tapers, starts out with a really light press, harder towards the center stroke, and then letting up again towards the back. So light to heavy to light is how you get those tapers and you get that look. So we'll just draw some different craters around here in various sizes, various places. So wherever you think looks good, that's where you can put them at. It doesn't have to follow along with exactly what I'm doing here. Totally up to you how you want to do them. Put some there, some over here. I don't really like that first taper as well. These I'm just trying to keep those the same distance as they go around. All right, and I think that looks pretty good. Maybe put some cracks coming up here in the moon, coming off to the sides. That might look kind of cool. All right, that looks good. So now let's go ahead and let's do some shading in on those. So we're going to set this to reference. And then going down here to layer 7, we're going to make a new layer. We're going to just drag and drop black inside those craters. This is going to be the shadows of those craters, making sure we get inside and not hit the lines. And then maybe drawing some shadows here along the back sides of the cracks too. Draw some there, maybe underneath here. And then we're going to go back up to our layers menu, blend mode again, drop down the opacity here, down to about 35%, 34%. I think that looks pretty good. So then coming back up here to my layers, very bottom layer, make a new layer. This is going to be the background. We're just going to do space, so I'm just going to drag black into there. Then I'm going to go in with white. And going in with just my regular standard inker. I'm going to put in some stars here. So pressing down harder is going to give you a bigger circle. Lighter is going to give you a smaller one. And we'll just knock in different sizes of stars around the background here to kind of finish this out. Once again, just kind of haphazard with this. No rhyme or reason to where they go. Just whatever you think looks good. That's what you can do to make this work. We'll get our stars in there. And then let's give those a little bit of a glow here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here, make sure we're on the same layer. Everything black and white is all on the same layer. That's the only way this is going to work. So if we go up to our adjustments now, we're going to go to Gaussian blur first and going to layer. We're going to slide this to the right to blur that a little bit. And then I'm going to come back up to my adjustments layer and I'm going to go to bloom and select a layer. And then we're going to slide this to the right and then adjust our size and our burn here to kind of get a little bit more of a glow. I think right about there looks pretty good. About 47%, so we got a nice glow off of there. Now let's give kind of a glow here behind. So you see here though, the one thing I want to do is this kind of pulled out a little bit. There's a line back there now, so I want to go back in with black and go over top of that line there. But I am going to give the moon a glow. So that's going to be the last step. For this, layer 6, the moon, the gray, I'm going to duplicate that layer. Then on the bottom one, I'm going to select white for my colors. I'm going to select that layer, and then I'm going to fill that layer. Now, I'm going to go back up here to Gaussian blur layer, and I'm just going to blur that out a little bit so that has kind of that glow coming off the moon. It kind of separates that a little bit more from the background. So last thing I need to do then, just going up, making a new layer here, is I just got to sign this guy and we will be done. So zoom in down here and get my signature knocked in. And there we go. One of the characters from Among Us. Hopefully you guys liked today's video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos. Also, if you take part in any of these tutorials, follow along with them and you post them online. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, definitely tag me at BJDell. I want to check them out. I want to see what you guys are doing Also, if you have Facebook and want to post them on there, I have a group over there called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artist, place where you can share your art based on these tutorials or just really anything art-wise that you're creating right now. Place where you can share, give feedback, get feedback, meet new friends. It's an awesome place to be and want you guys to be a part of it too. As for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as my podcast, Make Money with Your Art, available wherever you listen to podcasts at, made specifically for anyone out there who is an artist who wants to turn their passion for creating into something they can make money off of. I'll leave that in the description as well so you guys can check that out and find it. So that's it for me, and until next time, keep creating.